My boyfriend didn't stand up for me to his mean best friend for throwing me in the water when he knew I was terrified. So, when he dropped me off I told him we were done. This happened a couple of weeks ago. My boyfriend of 7 months invited me to go out on a boat with him and his friends. Typically this would be an immediate no. I am terrified of the ocean, specifically the open ocean. I can do ankle-deep beach water, but no boats. However, the boat was being rented by my BFS childhood best friend, Peter, who I had never gotten to meet. Peter moved cross-country before boyfriend I started dating and he was back in town. My boyfriend was adamant that I go so he could introduce his 2 favorite people. I felt like I really couldn't say no to that, so I agreed but told him there was no way I was getting in any water and reminded him that this was a genuine fear for me. He promised I could stay in the boat with no problem. When we got to the dock his friends were already sitting on what I would guess was a 20-foot boat. Nice size but not big enough for my safety concerns. Still, I took a deep breath and got in. I was trying to look calm but guess I was visibly anxious because the first thing Peter asked me was if I was nervous. I said yes just a little and my boyfriend chimed in and said she's scared of water, which kind of got on my nerves since I spent about 30 minutes explaining to him how it was more than that. Peter didn't really say anything in response but I thought I caught a taunting look in his eye. I told myself I was paranoid because of my heightened anxiety and just took my seat. I kept my eyes closed as we pulled away from the dock and tried to keep my breathing steady. I did not want to have a panic attack in front of my boyfriend's friends. Once we were to our spot and anchored I relaxed into the situation a little more. The water was calm and we were just chatting, drinking, and overall having a good time. After about 30 minutes Peter stood up, took off his shirt, looked directly at me, and announced it was time to go swimming. My blood immediately turned cold. I tried to laugh and told him I was just going to stay in the boat because the ocean wasn't really my thing. Peter got that weird look in his eye again and it gave me a really uneasy feeling. The next thing I knew he had grabbed me and threw me into the air before I could even react. I let out a blood-curdling scream as I hit the water. It all happened so fast. I know how to swim but I felt like my body was shutting down. I just kept kicking and screaming and reaching for the boat. I felt like I was in the water for hours, but it was probably a minute before my boyfriend reached down and pulled me back into the boat. I immediately collapsed to the floor and started gagging. I was also crying a lot. I felt so embarrassed but I just couldn't stop. I looked around for my boyfriend, and he was just sitting there looking at me. I wanted to ask him why he wasn't doing anything but I couldn't get my words. I was just hyperventilating and crying. "Geez, it's not that big of a deal, you were in the water for a second," Peter said. I again looked at my boyfriend and all he said was "I told you she was scared," and shrugged. "Take me back," I finally demanded. Peter resisted at first but after a few more gags he agreed. When we got back to the dock I was the first one off the boat. I said nothing before speeding off to the parking lot. I jumped in the car and just wrapped myself in a towel and cried. About 15 minutes later my boyfriend strolled up and got in the car. He asked me if I was seriously still crying. I didn't respond. "I pulled you out. What more did you want me to do?" he asked me. I told him that he should have stood up to Peter more and comforted me while I was sitting, throwing up water and crying. He said I overreacted and ruined the day. I told him to take me home. I didn't want to be near him. When he dropped me off I told him we were done and he's been blowing up my phone ever since. When I answered once he didn't apologize and again told me I was overreacting. I told him I no longer felt safe with him and hung up. My parents and sister told me I did the right thing, but I have a couple of friends who have told me that breaking up with him was an extreme reaction, especially since he wasn't the one who actually threw me in the water. I realize I may have been too hasty in my decision, but I really don't know if I can trust him anymore.